just thought yeah, no, that's all. I'll get out of your hair.
Good afternoon, everybody. You are in the Governmental Affairs full committee hearing, and we have several bills to look at today. I'm going to start and open us up in prayer. Then we'll get going. Dear Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for those that have come here to be a part of this process, serving the people of Georgia, and pray that you would give us wisdom today in all we do. Thank you. In your name, amen. All right, so we'll get right to it. Chairman Chuck Martin, if you'll come on up and present House H.R. 804. You presented this in subcommittee to us earlier this week.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'll be as brief. I'll be very brief. I'm not trying to hide anything from the committee, but the committee has seen this before. What we're seeking to do here, tax anticipation notes are what our political subdivisions do from time to time when they need money in just that, in anticipation of their ad valorem taxes coming in. In our particular case here, one of our school systems in the metro area has a time when the bills don't go out till very late, and they might not get their tax money until January. Currently, constitutionally, those tax anticipation notes have to be paid by December 31st. Doesn't do a lot of good if you have the note, the tax bills go out in December, you issue the tax bills, you have the tax anticipation loan, but it has to be paid back in 31 days because specifically you can't borrow money to pay that one back. So this just seeks to make them pay the note back over the following 12 months. So it doesn't expand it. All the protections that exist in the Constitution currently are still there, but it just really makes it usable for people that bill their taxes late in the year.
So am I oversimplifying, just to, as an example, if the loan is taken out in November, under today's laws, it would be due by that December 31st?
December 31st.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And in many cases, that doesn't accomplish the task because the tax payments may not come in until January, and they can't borrow more money to pay that because that's what the anticipation note was for. So.
Okay. All right. We've got a question, Representative Bazemore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not really a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing this. I think this could have helped in Fulton County?
Yes,
when
ma'am.
we had that problem?
Yes, ma'am.
And
This is
some people would not have gotten paid, and everything was behind. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I thank the lady for the question, and it was. I mean, Fulton County is one of the school systems that are interested. It could apply to other people. If you hit that unique, most of the school systems are in good shape financially, but if you hit that unique situation where the tax bills go out late, things are slow. I mean, if all those three things come together, we don't want to leave our educators in any kind of jeopardy, and we give them an opportunity to still protect the taxpayer, but to keep the people paid. Yes, ma'am.
Definitely. Thank you.
Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Martin, for bringing this bill. I do some local government work and used to represent some counties and all that. This was always a struggle with these tax anticipation notes. And if I understand the language of the proposed amendment is this would be utilizable not only by school districts, but by counties and municipalities also.
That is correct. Any political subdivision of the state, yes, sir.
And to your point, it's always a challenge because if you tie it to a calendar year, which arguably the current Constitution does, to your point, we don't get any money coming in until pretty close to December 31 or after it. So there's not revenue to pay that any debt that's been incurred close to that period of time. And to your point, you can't borrow again. That's illegal technically.
That is correct. It's just something I don't know. Over time, maybe the billing of taxes got later and later into the year, and I can't explain how we got to this, but yes, it's just plain not usable in many cases where people bill in November.
That's a great point. It's really not the utility of the tax anticipation note is very much limited by the realities of the fiscal life of a political subdivision. And I think, so as I understand what you're doing here is you're basically saying it no longer has to happen within a calendar year. It just happens sort of in a rolling 12-month period from whenever the debt's incurred that you have to pay back.
Yes, sir. On lines 13 and 14 directly speak to that. It deletes 31st of the current calendar year and says has to be paid in full within 12 months of the initial funding date.
Well, thank you for bringing the bill.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If appropriate, I'd like to move do pass.
We've got a motion. We have a second.
If he's asking me, Mr. Chairman, I'm for it.
Any discussion? I don't hear any. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. It moves.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you. All right, we'll move right along to House Bill 974 sub, and this is a minor change that I wanted to bring back to committee after we pass this. I think it was last week. It was brought to my attention that there was no storage limit, in the bill, and so I just added on line 18 that the scanned ballots. Again, this is the bill that requires the secretary to maintain a program that makes scanned ballots available online. And so the sub that is before us today, LC 472809S, puts a 24-month storage requirement, which matches the storage requirement for what we have today for the real paper ballots. So that's it. So, Representative Anderson?
Move do pass.
We have a motion. We have a second. We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Say aye. Any opposed? Say no. All right. Very good. Thank you. And we have another bill by Representative Scott Hilton, and I knew he was going to be coming in hot, and so I'm checking with him now to see how quick he can be here.
Yeah, education.
All right, we'll be at ease for around 5 minutes while Representative Hilton walks over. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our bill sponsor has arrived. You were saved by the bell. Thank you. So, Representative Hilton, you've got House Bill 1039, and it's so important that this whole room waited about 3.5 minutes for you to get here.
Thank you, guys.
So go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's just talking about blockchain, so I got to rearrange a little bit here. But yeah, bring to you House Bill 1039, reading from LC 472659. We had a good discussion in subcommittee in regards to this bill, and so proud to bring you guys this today. It deals with election transparency and campaign advertising. And as we were discussing the bill, folks said, well, is this happening? What's going on in this space right now? And I'll have the chairman send this out to you all, but the New York Times did a piece on this about a year ago. I'll just read the title of it to you. Campaigns pay influencers to carry their messages skirting political ad rules. And that's what's happening in the market right now. All of us as public servants, when we run for office, we try to be as transparent as possible with who we pay, what the advertisement says, and where the money's going. I mean, we've got a whole ethics commission. I know we've got the director here with us. There he is, right there, who can help answer any specific questions. But the sole purpose of that is so our constituents know who's paying for what, where the money's going. And that's the intent of this bill right here. Media is changing from your traditional television top, you see the advertisement on TV, to this right here. And I've got a 17-year-old home, and this is where he gets his news from. And if that news doesn't clearly say on there who's paying for that ad, we can run afoul of a lot of things pretty quick. And so it's a 2-page bill. Page 1, lines 12 through 15, define what a social media personality is. And the crux of the bill is on page 2. If you, as a campaign, pay a social media influencer to put an ad up about you and how great you are, that has to be either disclosed verbally in the post or in writing. Again, trying to mirror what we're already doing in practice. You see this fall, we're going to see hundreds of television ads. I'm running for president, and this is paid for by me. We've got to apply the same rule of thumb on videos that you get here, right on your Reels, YouTube, Facebook, etc. And so in committee, a couple questions came up. Well, Scott, how does this actually work in practice if someone runs afoul of this? So if I'm a campaign, I'm running against an opponent who I see in their disclosure. We'd all just filed our end of January disclosures. If you go through my disclosure and I say I paid Taylor Swift $100,000 to talk about how great I am, Taylor Swift would need to disclose on that post, this is paid for by committee to elect Scott Hilton. If that does not happen, me as her opponent or whoever I'm running against, I'd go to Mr. Mahdi and say, here's the social media post, here's where they paid them, and they would begin their due process of, I would then file an ethics complaint, and they would go through their normal due process there. So the liability would be back on the campaign. I'll pause for a minute. That's the intent of the bill, what we hope to achieve, and again, kind of just bring more transparency. It's amazing the millions of folks now that are using this and getting their political news from here. And I'll put a plug in for my own social media if I can, but Scott Hilton, GA.
Representative Hilton, are you a social media influencer?
Not according to my 1,100 followers on Instagram, no. I'm trying.
No, but all jokes aside, if you were getting paid by someone to promote them as a candidate, that would put you in this category.
Yeah, and we're keeping consistent with what we're seeing in the private sector. A lot of companies now, Procter & Gamble, whoever, they're actually requiring their content creators to put something in, because folks want to know that. Is my person posting something because they're paid to say that, or they really do care about, buying toothpaste and toothbrush or whatever? Yeah.
Representative Saines.
You at Scott Hilton.
At Scott Hilton GA, just
thanks.
for those.
Much appreciated. Social media personality, as it begins in line 12, the way I read it because I'm trying to understand the limitation there. Would every social media user be a personality? Because I see monetary or non-monetary remuneration, or however you say that one. But what doesn't apply? Who doesn't apply as a social media personality? And that might be a policy decision, so I'm fine with that. I just want to.
Yeah, a couple of things I do want to hit on that, and in regards to monetary, non-monetary. So we have to file donations and then in kind. So if I give someone a truckload of, whatever, instead of cash payment, we're sort of trying to capture that transaction, that sort of in kind gift it may be. And then in regards to social media personality. I do want to highlight, because a lot of these times you don't pay the person. A lot of these folks have a management company, and so we did work that into the definition. But yeah, we didn't, as a policy position, we didn't want to put a stake in must have greater than X number. Really, the stake is at, are they getting paid? So my little 1,100, someone decides I'm worth it, and pays me 500, 1,000, 10,000. I would need to disclose that.
Well, you are worth it. You are social, and you influence me every day, buddy. But
Taylor,
in terms of the bill, what's the punishment here? I see what they have to do. What if they don't do it? Is there some kind of ethics fee that our lovely ethics director would bestow upon them?
I'll defer to him, but as I mentioned at the outset, yeah, they would go through the normal ethics process,
Okay.
Of which I imagine there'd be a fine of some sort and an ethics violation. I think all of us know when you're campaigning, ethics violations are, a lot worse than whatever the fine may be. Ultimately, yeah.
And last question, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. On line 23, writing or made verbally, is there a decision to not make that and? I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to the committee. Obviously, we wanted it to be. We didn't want to be too heavy-handed, and so verbally or in writing was fine with us. There was a question that did come up in subcommittee in regards to the font of the writing. Again, I'd be open to a friendly amendment if we wanted to say must be greater than, I don't know what people can read these days, 2, 3, 4-point font. I didn't want to get too granular and heavy-handed in the policy from that perspective.
Well, I think this is great legislation. I don't want to do anything to modify it. I'm posing the question in case there's an issue that comes up, but I'd personally like to see that be an and just to capture and safeguard any misuses there. But I'll just leaving that as a general statement for now. Thank you for bringing this legislation to us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's see, Representative Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has any other state tried to do this?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I am trying to figure out the connection between social media personality and non-monetary remuneration. You're a social media personality, we agree. In this committee, you're included in that. And your non-monetary remuneration could be an endorsement by a newspaper, an endorsement by the NRA, an endorsement by blah, blah, blah. You get the drift? I'm thinking about how you would really put it together with a non-monetary remuneration to where it makes sense. And that's why I'm kind of curious if other states have looked at that.
I'm not sure other states have. Again, I may defer to Director Motti how he would consider the non-monetary.
Was he listening?
I don't think so.
But an endorsement is a non-monetary remuneration.
We talked about some of that in committee too. I think you would have to demonstrate in your ethics filing. We talked about more than likely you're entering into some sort of transaction or agreement or even contract or something in writing. I'm doing this for that. I imagine would have to exist at some level.
I'm going to vote for this bill, and I'm raising an issue that may not be a real issue, but I just can't answer my own question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's a good question.
Thank you. We'll move to Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I don't know that I can, but the question was posed of the remuneration being an endorsement, meaning an endorsement of the candidate or the candidate's endorsing the social media personality. See, as I read it, it's monetary or non-monetary remuneration. It's some kind of consideration. I can't say remuneration very well. That would be coming from the candidate to the website.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. Yeah. It would be a non-monetary toward the social media personality, not the NRA. The NRA can endorse me. Gun safety folks can endorse me. As long as if I am paying the NRA to endorse me, they would need to disclose that is the direction.
If you give your email list of 7,000 people to the NRA, that's a non-monetary remuneration.
If I do that in exchange for them
Posting content.
I think, I'm troubled, but I'm going to vote for it anyway because,
Well, I don't want you troubled.
I'm sure you're worried about that.
We'll move to Representative Roberts.
So I have kind of a similar question. So we have, I've had, what do you call it? Video producers, organizations that will in-kind their services of doing a campaign video for me. And I have to report that on my disclosure. How could someone not argue that, because we said in our committee meeting that if Taylor Swift endorses me openly and I don't pay them anything,
You're good.
but she's valuable. So how do I know somebody's not going to argue that I should be reporting an in-kind contribution for her unpaid for endorsement?
Because you haven't given her anything of in kind to her.
I understand that
No,
part,
yeah.
but okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you give Taylor money or help me out here, something valuable that she would want. Tickets to the Super Bowl.
She's got tickets. She's got a front row seat. She's on the field.
If you give her a Travis Kelce jersey, then yeah, she would need to report that on her
gotcha,
posting. Okay. Yeah. And in regards to your video guys taking campaign video of you, that's okay, because that's going your direction. They're doing in kind for you.
But I report that in kind. I guess what I'm saying
You would,
is,
yeah.
is her are these business endorsements essentially we're saying there's value there, right? That these people they've established themselves almost as a business. So how is that not different, their open endorsement of me, something I have to report as an in-kind donation? Am I making sense? Like the video company is doing it for me.
Yeah, and you're receiving an in kind.
And I'm receiving it,
donation
and I
from them.
report it. So even if I'm not paying Taylor Swift, if Taylor Swift is her own entity, why don't I have to report a free endorsement as an in-kind donation?
Again, I defer to the ethics director. If she...
Do you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
mean, we're saying that they've reached this level, and this is the point of the bill.
Yeah, so if
that
Taylor, of
yeah.
her own volition, woke up and said, Shay Roberts is my girl, and endorsed you, that's...
As she should.
As she should. That's... well, yes.
Okay, now I'm not voting
No,
for the bill.
that is not reportable, or that's not touched by this, because you haven't... She did it of her own volition. She thinks you're great. She can say that. Again, it doesn't touch free speech in that anybody who thinks any of y'all are great can still get on social media. But if you pay someone to say you're great, we got to let the voters know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm going to move on to Representative Gullett.
Thank you. So, yeah, I know we're all kind of caught up on the same thing. Scenario, and just tell me how it plays out. Governor endorses me I donate to the governor. They're not related at all. But he does an endorsement of me. Is that now that endorsement, a paid endorsement, if I donate to his campaign? Again, not related to the, you know. And the only reason I say I would refer to the ethics director, I love our ethics director. But one day he might not be the ethics director, so I really want it. I feel like I'm almost like a lawyer sometimes. Like I want it kind of in there and not at the discretion of the ethics director, because a new ethics director may think something differently. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what does this mean for us? And does everything, you know, to cover yourself, in anyone doing something like that, just need to put a disclaimer on there that, you know, that's where I feel like it's going. But I also, you know. Does that make sense? Is that like a
no? And I'll defer. I hate keep it. I keep trying to phone my friend, but he doesn't.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask Director Amati to come up, if that's good with you.
Yeah.
To help with some clarification.
I may defer to legislative counsel. Is that you back there? Stu? Yeah. Yeah. But no, I mean, to answer your question directly, if you paid the governor $250 or whatever you want to donate to his campaign with the intent of him.
Yeah, but intent, you don't know. I mean, I donate, you don't know that. Because I do feel like once you said someone's paid for this, like the value of it goes way down, right? So if it's not, it's just a scenario that kind of came up.
So just kind of jumping in, diving at the point, it's a fundamentally First Amendment issue. You have a First Amendment right to speech. So if Taylor Swift decides, and I heard Shay Roberts Is Your Girl is actually on the new album, for what it's worth. But if Taylor Swift decides Shay Roberts is your girl, she has a First Amendment right to come out and endorse Shay. And any law in any state that tries to infringe upon that would be unconstitutional. What this gets to is a fundamental contract law issue. And to Representative Gullick's point, the difference in you donating to the governor and then him 12 months later endorsing you is there's no quid pro quo. There's not a promise, an exchange, and a consideration. There has to be a meeting of the minds that one person is doing this in exchange for that. And when you don't have that, you don't have essentially a contract with a vendor for, no different than we're a super PAC, right? Or a special interest group endorsing. You have contribution limits. There can't be coordination, but the moment you have a meeting of the minds, well, now you have a connection between the two. And so if there's no agreement of social media influencer does X in exchange for Y, whether it's monetary or non-monetary, whether it's money or a Bitcoin or whatever, then this bill doesn't touch that speech. It's protected.
So, Director Amati, how would this play out if this law was violated? Would the candidate who was hurt by this need to report it to your office, and then what would happen?
So one of two things could happen. The candidate, so we use the example of Representative Hilton has an opponent who pays $100,000 an influencer. We have the post, but there's no disclosure of who paid for it. Representative Hilton could file an ethics complaint with our office, or if our office happened to become aware of it independently, we could file a complaint of our own accord. And from there, we'd go through the due process. We'd have hearings. We'd have the right to response by the respondent. And ultimately, if violations occur, it's no different than existing law with leadership committees or independent committees or what have you. They're required to disclose who paid for the ads, whether it's video, print, mailers, etc. It's no different than those organizations. If they didn't disclose, each violation would be a violation under Georgia law, punishable by a fine.
I mean, really, it's kind of the wild, wild west right now. It's an unregulated, people are kind of skirting around the laws that we haven't set in place by paying for political advertising without having to disclose that.
All right, we got some new lights blinking. I'm going to go to Representative Maynor.
We better stop talking.
Number 25.
I tried not to come up.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points, if I may. The first one is in subcommittee, we kind of just said that we would look at this Imagine mailers right? So if the NRA used our mailing list to do a social media ad and they did paid advertising, they have to report that they did paid advertising, and they would have to report who the paid advertising benefited. So that's one end of it, versus on our end, if we paid them, similarly to if it's printed media, we would have to report that we paid the NRA on our end. But that's just one point. I feel like by your eyebrows, I did not explain that well.
It's just late in the afternoon, yeah.
The
I'm
other
focused.
thing, though, is I think we should also just know that there's also oppositional. There could be oppositional paid advertising, meaning someone could say, instead of it saying, I support candidate A, and I am disclosing that candidate A paid me, we need to make sure that in this, well, now this is for you, in this bill, does that cover if the influencer says candidate B is terrible, even though candidate A paid for them to say it? Does that include this?
Yes. So I'm going to, at the risk of everyone's sort of exasperation of this, I'm going to do a hypothetical redistricting here and draw Representative Roberts and Hilton into the same district for just this moment. If Representative Hilton pays a social media influencer $100,000 to run social media ads on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, talking about how terrible Representative Roberts is, at the bottom of that advertisement will have to say this was paid for by Scott Hilton. So again, speech, words, they happen, but at the very least, the end recipient sees this person trashing Shay Roberts is doing so at Scott Hilton's behest. And I think that's sort of reasonably the most we can give to the public to make an informed decision with the information they get.
All right, Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you think this is Wild West, try writing a bill on people that don't exist, generative AI. That's even more fun than this Wild West. And I've dealt with some of the issues that you're going through on this as we've been working through that bill in another committee. One of the things that did come up that I've noticed, you're, and I know you mentioned that you wanted to keep things kind of open, but what's to stop somebody from making a disclosure or statement that's so small you can't read it, or a verbal that's said so fast you don't understand what it says. So and so I've got some language, if you'd be open to that, to put in here that's from the AI bill that I'm carrying that might help you in that. So I'm just throwing that out if you want to meet later, assuming I don't know if this is going to move today or not, but that was just my only comment.
Thank you for that. Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was making some notes here as we were discussing some issues, and I suppose I would pose this as nature of a question to the director and the sponsor too. My understanding is the bill as drafted addresses only content and content that appears online. This is not, I'm assuming we already have rules that would address me holding up a sign on a road for someone where I'm getting paid or something of that nature, or in either event, it would be outside the scope of this. This is just online content.
Yeah, and I would refer to the definition.
Yeah, and the definition.
Posts that are viewable by other users on one or more online social media platforms. Yeah.
So that would refer to that. And secondly, as I read this, to Director Monti's point, this is not rendering illegal the speech. It's rendering illegal the failure to disclose the transaction that produced the speech. So you're making it illegal to basically, for somebody to say something about you that you've paid for and not have them disclose it. So and I'm assuming that the commission's process there would be if they felt if they discovered a failure to disclose, they would initiate a fine proceeding, which if to Representative Gullett's point, if there wasn't really any quid pro quo for the two, if it was just coincidental or because the two entities did support each other, I would be able to try to establish that in a proceeding before the commission before any kind of fine or imposition will become final.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, although I'd take a step back. I don't think you have to prove anything. I think the burden would be on the commission to actually prove the connection. Now, if there were some connection proven that wasn't legitimate, you could disprove that. But, we're getting into a hypothetical scenario that I just don't know that that's going to happen.
Well, I guess I think Representative Gullett's point was sometimes it is difficult to prove the absence of any connection. That's just a matter of evidence that applies to any number of kind of charges that are within your purview or that with any other sort of regulatory agency's purview.
Correct.
So while it's a legitimate issue, I don't know that it's necessarily an issue that is solely, endemic to this bill.
Right.
It's just the nature of the beast, so to speak.
Enemy's the perfect of good.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's no way to draft this perfectly, but I think this is, I've worked with Representative Hilton. I think this is a pretty good attempt at what we're looking to do here.
One other question, Mr. Chairman, and then a number of the other questions raised an issue that I want to make sure I understand correctly. Is I view this, when you say in return for monetary or non-monetary remuneration, you're talking about remuneration that is from the candidate or the candidate's committee. We're not talking about some other benefit that flowed from the social media personality to the candidate. That's the whole point. That was beneficial, and if it has the appearance of being devoid of the transaction, it's much more valuable, but it's not really as genuine. And so you're trying to make sure people at least disclose the transaction in the posting.
Correct.
So some of the questions suggested to me, and I may not have understood them, that there was some concern about benefits flowing from the social media person to the candidate. That's already there. That's inherent in the transaction, or inherent in the nature of what they're doing. The point is you try to disclose the other side of the transaction, which is the payment coming from the candidate or the candidate's committee.
Presumably there's a benefit from the social media influencer to the candidate. They wouldn't engage in the services to begin with, right?
If so, they need to sue them because they're not getting their money's worth.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But no, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the
Representative Gaines.
Thank you all for the bill. Under current law, is there any expenditure by a campaign committee that requires paid for by on?
So, Chairman Hilton and I had this conversation. There's a bit of inconsistency in Georgia law. So if there's an expenditure that engages in political speech, advocacy, and it's paid for by an independent committee or a super PAC, it's required to disclose that information on the ad.
Right.
If it's paid for by a leadership committee, it's required to be disclosed for on that ad. If it's paid for by the actual campaign committee, it's not.
Right.
Now, I can tell you 95% of campaigns, when they send out mailers, they put it on there because they just assume that's the law. But that is the one area where there's inconsistency with the rest of Georgia law.
So my only question is, this would become the only expenditure that exists in Georgia law by a candidate committee that will require paid for by. Is that right?
In its current iteration, yes.
Director Motti and I, we went back and forth a good bit. I would be open to that. I wanted to kind of keep the bill simple and focused on the issue at hand. I think whether it's in this bill or another bill, I do think that loophole needs to be closed because it's a wide open, And again, if it's a friendly amendment from this committee, I'd be happy to entertain it. To the director's point, I know I do at least in practice. I put on all my mail. And frankly, it was eye-opening to me. Wait, I don't, So, if we're talking about election transparency and voter transparency, I think it'd be healthy. If we want to address it in this bill, I'm open to it. If we want to introduce something separate, I'm open to that as well. So.
All right, I'm going to take one more question from over here, then come over here where I believe we might have a motion. Representative Maynor.
This is for the director. So, as we were talking, it just made me think about, imagine if the Georgia Federation for Teachers, at the teachers union, has a candidate. Or if it's not them, it is, I'm going to make up a name, Georgia Women Voting League, right? And say if the candidate pays to go through Georgia Women Voting League candidate training, so now they've paid to go through this program, and then on the back end they succeed through the program, and then the Georgia Women Voting League decides to do advertising to say we support this candidate, do they then have to say this was paid for by the candidate because they did pay to go through the training for it?
Right. So no, because I think in that scenario, there's a disconnect between the purpose of the training and the ultimate endorsement. Now, in your scenario, however, if this organization, we'll call it the Federation of Women Voters, was that if they're endorsing candidates for elected office, they're engaged in express advocacy, they're effectively an independent committee, and however they disclose that they're endorsing certain candidates, they have to disclose, their own disclaimer that it's paid for by who they are, et cetera. But you don't have the consideration, the exchange contractually for why they went through the training and the ultimate endorsement.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Representative Saines.
Thank you. And quick point of clarification, and just correct me if I'm wrong. And I do understand the lack of consistency and maybe a good policy. I don't want to add that to my motion. Maybe there's an added one. But my understanding of this legislation is that when you send out a mailer, if you don't put your committee's name, you might be sending something out anonymously. However, if you're using an influencer, you're utilizing the influence of another entity to make your pitch, which I think is a little bit distinct and is the policy concern that you're trying to rectify. With that, I would like to first make a motion to pass for this bill so that amendments could be considered.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now we'll go into discussion where you will entertain amendments.
I have a suggested amendment to, on line 23, change the word or to and then on line 24, after the word verbally, insert when the respective media allows.
Second.
So we have a motion, the Saines motion, to add and on line 23 in place of or, to replace or with and after the word verbally. Is that where you were starting your other part of the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. After the word verbally on line 24, insert, quote, when the respective media allows, unquote.
All right, does everybody have the Saines amendment?
Which makes sense. Say Taylor does a Twitter post, not a video. She can't verbally say in that Twitter post. Yeah, so that makes sense.
All right, so did we have a second on that amendment?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of the Saines amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right. So the amendment is adopted. And I believe we have Representative Thomas here that might want to offer an amendment.
Thank you. At the end of line 26, I'd actually like to add, and shall be clearly readable. Along with that, I'd also like to add, period, the use of audible media shall be clearly announced and articulated. So that's it. Yeah, I'm using another section of code here where it says shall be clearly readable, but legible is fine. I'll take that.
So shall be clearly legible, and then what was the second part?
And the second part, well, it'll period, for the use of audible media, such disclosure shall be announced, articulated, and spoken, or otherwise rendered completely using the same audible volume at the same rate of speaking, as measured in words per minute. That's exactly the way it's written in this code. So, here you go.
All right, we might need that spoken a little slower.
All right, we're going to read it nice and slow. All right.
You speak it audibly in the same cadence.
3 words per minute.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, here we go. For our final time. 26. All right. And shall be clearly legible after political action committee. Period. Well, I'm going to move on. Y'all ready? All right. Okay, good. The capital T, the use of audible media shall be announced, articulated, spoken, or otherwise rendered completely using the same audible volume, same rate of speaking, as used in the remainder of the advertisement. Was that good?
We'll give our ledge counsel time to catch up writing, and I'll ask him to repeat it just to be sure. So, Mr. Morelli, when you're ready, if you could repeat what you got, and we'll make sure that's what the Representative Thomas intended.
I apologize for being so...
Seems like reading my handwriting. Okay, so at the end of line 26, and shall be legible, shall be clearly legible, yeah. And then a period, or, well, actually, there's the period there already. And after the period.
So we'd be deleting the existing period and...
Really didn't be inserting after political action committee, but before
Oh,
the
yeah,
period.
but before the period. Gotcha.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yep.
And so then after the period, the use of audible media shall be announced, articulated, spoken, and otherwise rendered completely using the same volume, rate of speaking as is used in the remainder of the posting.
That's correct.
I chose posting instead of advertisement because that's the term used in the rest of the...
Yeah, we might have something that's running parallel to this that uses advertisement, but yeah, that's good.
I had or. Is it announced, articulated, spoken, or and?
Actually, the way I said it was or, so.
I wrote or as well, but I read and for some reason.
Okay.
Okay. Does everybody have the Thomas Amendment? All right. So we have a motion on the Thomas Amendment. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second. All in favor of the Thomas Amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right. So the Thomas Amendment carries.
And if anyone wants to amend the title of the act to the Taylor Swift Act, I would be open to that as well.
So we have a motion on the table and a second to pass now an amended with the Saines Amendment and the Thomas Amendment bill. So is our author, you good with proceeding this way?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So all in favor of the amended bill say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. All right. It moves.
Thank you.
As amended.
Yes, sir. Thank you, committee.
All right, everybody. Thanks for attending today, and we'll be adjourned.